Okay, in this video, I'm going to discuss fair share voting. This is an electoral reform proposal for the UK that intends to accomplish two primary things. First, it ensures that parties win a share of the seats that is proportional to the share of the vote they earned. No more, no less. Second, this is big, it is very, very simple. It's hard to achieve a good voting procedure and keep it simple, so we go out of our way to do that here. I'm going to show you how simple it really is. So first, there are your local elections. In this example, Mayor of Manchester, we have some political parties listed here. Apologies if the preferred party for you or parties are not listed here. We're trying to keep the example simple, so I only listed 4 parties, but you can imagine it would be the same with any number of parties. Now, the rules, it looks outwardly just like first past the post. You get a regular ballot, and the candidate with the most votes wins, but you can approve as many candidates as you like. The candidate with the most approvals wins. This is called approval voting, has a lot of history behind it. It's been advocated by political scientists, and I'm going to discuss some other places it's been used in a bit here, but let's go over here to Parliament, House of Commons. You're going to just vote for a party, in this case, Liberal Democrats for this example voter, and if you want to, you can also vote for the party list. Now, when you vote for the party, that just means that you're helping ensure they get a fair share of the seats. They're going to get a percentage of the seats that corresponds to the share of the votes they earned. If you earn 20% of the votes, you get 20% of the seats. If you earned 25% of the votes, you get 25% of the seats. But the way that works normally is that the party has a list of candidates. It's ordered, 1, 2, 3, etc. So let's just say your party won 40 seats. You would just go down that list and you would elect the first 40 candidates on that list, and the rest would not be winners. Now, in a closed list system, the party internally picks that list. They can order it however they want. In an open list system, you, the voter, has your say. You have your say in how that list is ordered. And so that's what we do here. So basically, you can just vote for as many as you want, and the candidates appear in that order. So the candidate with the most votes would be the first to win a seat, second most votes would be second, and so forth. Really holds the candidates accountable, even though the system is based on a vote for a party. And if you want to just vote for the party and be done with it, you can totally do that. The full power of your vote goes to ensure your party gets a fair share of seats. If you don't want to weigh in on the individual order of the list, that's your prerogative. You don't have to, and the system works fine whether you do that or not. That's just for you as a voter. It's an option that can hold the party more accountable, the individual candidates more accountable, and that can be really helpful in certain cases that we'll discuss. But that's basically the gist of it. That's how the system works. It's fair and simple. And we're going to go a bit now into the derivation of the system. Why do we want this? Well, back in 2011, the UK had an electoral reform referendum to do the alternative vote, which is a non-proportional ranked system. It would be even more complex if it were both ranked and proportional. And even that system, not even being proportional, lost by worse than a 2-to-1 majority. 67.9% of voters said no to it. And there's a lot of evidence that the complexity, or at least the perceived complexity, was a big part of the reason that it failed, right? So that's why we feel that you need a system that is effective, but it has to be dead simple, or voters are just going to say no to it. You want a system that you can explain to your 80-year-old grandma, and she gets it, right? So going a little more in depth here, let's walk through the process one step at a time. Again, approval voting. This is a system that is just like first past the post, except you can vote for as many candidates as you want to. This system has a lot of precedent. There's a guy named Stephen Brams, who was an NYU professor of political science at New York University and game theory. So he worked in both the how do people tactically try to manipulate systems, but also the political science angle. And he wrote a couple of books on this, and he's advocated it for many years. It's been used also within political parties. It was used in ancient Venice for like 500 years, and they got rid of it only because Napoleon conquered them and changed the system. Otherwise, they might still be using it today. It has been used to elect the Pope in the Catholic Church, and more recently, it was adopted by a 2/3 majority via a referendum, a ballot initiative, in 2 U.S. cities, Fargo, North Dakota, and St. Louis, Missouri. And not only was it adopted by an overwhelming majority, but it seems to have worked really, really well. Just no complexity. It's dead simple. It's very transparent. No additional costs. So it has a lot of advantages in terms of simplicity over a ranked system, but it still gives you most of the core advantages. You fix the spoiler effect or vote splitting effect. You make sure it's safe to vote for your favorite. If you don't think they can win, you can cast a compromise vote for someone who you think is a lesser evil, a compromise candidate that you can live with, who maybe has a better chance of winning, is more viable. So very flexible in that way while retaining that simple first past the post ballot. It's a great compromise. Again, a party list system. This is how basically all of the almost every European country that does proportional representation uses that system. So it's very familiar and intuitive and doesn't have any real additional complexity. You're just voting for a party and you're done. If you want to have this enhanced participation, if you really want to do your research and weigh in on the individual candidates, you can do that. You can just approve any that you want to in the list, and then they will be ordered based on how many votes they got. Okay, so we're going to go a little deeper here now, and there's one other thing we want to do, which is to make sure no votes are wasted. So we're adding an interesting little wrinkle to things here, where you as a voter don't have to think about this at all, but the party has the option of ranking other parties to create a priority listing of where would you like your surplus votes to go. So if you have, let's say you win, 40.3 seats worth of votes, that 0.3 of a seat could represent thousands and thousands of votes that would otherwise be wasted. Well, let's imagine that a party that's a philosophical ally of yours, they're somewhat similar to you with some overlapping support. Maybe they have 0.7 of a vote, and your 0.3 of a vote could actually help lift them over that edge to get them one more seat, right? You'd probably rather do that in exchange for some sort of horse trading or political concessions than just see those votes wasted. So with this system, you can do that, and that can help ensure that your constituents are going to get everything they deserve. So even if you don't have a decisive share of the vote where you get to sort of dictate some policy, you could say, hey, we would like you to nudge this policy over a little bit in this direction, maybe make a few small policy adjustments in support of our constituents. In exchange for that, we will give you our surplus votes to just make sure that votes aren't wasted and the outcome really reflects the will of the people as closely as possible. Wasted votes are just inherently an undemocratic idea. And also this can be really effective at giving voters more transparency into what's going on behind the scenes. Oftentimes, sort of the political horse trading that happens is in these smoke-filled dark rooms. And if you can actually see it publicly declared before the election what other parties a given political party thinks are its philosophical allies and what order it would like to redistribute its votes, that can be a really important indicator of where their loyalties really lie, and it forces them to kind of put their money where their mouth is. So we think that's really powerful, and it's a very simple thing because you as a voter don't even have to think about it. You can just see it on your ballot. Here's their priority ranking, and here's where they're going to redistribute their votes if they have any kind of excess votes left over that would otherwise be wasted. So sample ballot, again, we've already talked about this. Here's your mayor, here's your parliament ballot, and then if you want to, you can optionally order that list by showing your support for the candidates on the list. Now here's a worked example. I had an LLM and AI do this, so there's one or two minor mathematical mistakes, but it's good enough to show you the gist, right? So we have an example turnout of 47 million. It's a realistic UK turnout. There are 650 seats to be filled, so you divide that, it gives you a seat cost of 72,308 votes per seat. In this example, we're using a threshold of 5%. That means that a party has to get at least 5%, in this case 33 seats, to qualify to get any seats at all. Now, we're not necessarily recommending this or saying you should do this, but this is a common thing that has been employed in many proportional systems that might be a political necessity to help avoid like hyper-fragmentation into a bunch of super tiny parties. And you could even have this be bigger. You could have it be 10%. There's some indications that you don't even really need this because even with a no threshold, you wouldn't get that much fragmentation. But, this is an option, and we want to just show the system works well with this, whether you have it or not, whether you make it 5%, 10%, the system is going to handle that very gracefully. So here are the seats awarded based on the votes, and we've ordered them by how many votes each party got. So the party that got the most in this example, this is meant to be roughly realistic. It's based on recent election polling. I'm not trying to show favoritism. It's just kind of based on some data that we've seen lately in the media. Reform UK gets 12.22 million votes. That's 26%. So they win 169 seats. And after you look at this seat cost that we discussed here, that means they have a little over 2,000, almost 3,000 votes that are unspent. Those are votes they still retain, they still hold on to. They can potentially redistribute in later rounds so that they're not wasted, right? So the party that does the worst here, though, is the SNP in this example, and they win 4%. So they would win about 26, 27 seats, but they don't have that threshold, so they're not going to actually get any. But because we don't want them to have to waste those votes, we allow them to redistribute. And in this case, their ranked list just would have had Labor as the #1 choice on it. In the real world, I don't know how realistic that is. Maybe they would have picked Green, just an example. But so you're going to see that in the next round, they are now finalized. They are now out of the running. This is indicated in red. They won 0 seats. They're done. They cannot receive any votes. They're out of the running. But they did add those 1.88 million votes over here to Labor, right? So now they have a total, given Labor already had up here like 26,000 unspent votes. You add that to the 1.88 million they just earned, so now they have this 1.9 unspent votes. So these aren't wasted, they get to be accumulated and potentially can go into seats in the future here. Like for instance, now we say that Labor buys 26 seats. We say buys, that's just a helpful analogy. They're not buying the seats, they're just turning votes into seats. You just divide, we take how many votes are still unspent, divided by how many seats are still unfilled, and we get the next round's votes per seat, the cost of a seat. And since Labor had 1.9 million unspent votes, you divide this by this and you get 26 more seats now. So they've earned some more seats, and now we are closer to having all our seats filled. Now Labor still has 10,240 unspent left. That's like the remainder. They still hold on to that. But in this round, the Green is now the weakest remaining party. So they're finalized. And they are now going to donate their unspent votes, 39,136, to Labor. Now, the mathematical error I think I made here is that those should be going over here to Labor, and they didn't. So please forgive that, but the example still basically works the same. So now Green's finalized. They win their 58 seats. So they got 58 seats. They are done. They can no longer receive any surplus votes from anyone else. They're considered like eliminated from the process. And now, however, Lib Dem is finalized because they are the weakest remaining party. And so they have 97 seats. They have 37,724 unspent. So they're finalized. So down here you see Lib Dem is now finalized. They've got their 97 seats. These excess votes went to Labor. I think this time we actually did count them. I see what we did here. The AI that did this actually added them up at the same time. So it took those 37,000 here, and I think this 10,000 left up here that we're going to transfer, or sorry, this 39,000 that we're going to transfer from Green to Labor, and it's just added them both now in a single round. So the math I think is right, but it just didn't do them stepwise. It did them both in a single round. Please forgive that, but anyway. So now you see that the Conservatives are now the weakest remaining party, and Labor does have their full, 87,100 unspent votes. So Labor now buys 1 seat because the cost per seat now, with only 2 seats and 145,000 some unspent votes, 72,000 votes per seat. And so now, if you look at this, it means there are none to be picked up here because this is not enough unspent votes to buy another seat. So Conservative is just done. They get their 136 seats, and then they transfer their 56,000 unspent votes to the Reform Party. And so in this next round here, you see Conservative is finalized, and now the Reform Party has more votes than they had previously, right? Before they had only like 2,600 unspent votes. Now they have 58,000 because the Conservatives giving them their unspent votes. And so, no one remaining can afford a seat. So Reform is finalized. They're going to be done now with, let's see here. They have is that actually right? Oh yeah, because it's based on total seats. Reform is finalized, and with having the fewest seats, and that transfers 58,720 to Labor. So Labor now has exactly 72,910 seats, which is how many you need, or votes, which is what you need for 1 seat. That's obvious, right? Because there's only 1 party left, and there's only 1 seat left. So the seat cost is going to be exactly how many votes they have unspent divided by 1 seat. So that's why that number is the same. So that's sort of a formality in the last round. It's like who's going to get the last seat, but we still do the math here just to show you how it works. And so yeah, that is how it all works out. It's really quite simple, and it's literally just doing division, taking the remainder out, transferring. But it's not done at every ballot level, right? Like every ballot is just a simple some set of votes, candidates or parties. You just add them up, And this is all just in the tabulation, and it remains pretty simple. And so, yeah, here are the final results. Labour with 29.2%, Reform UK 26%, Conservative 20.9%, Liberal Democrats 14.9%, Green 8.9%, and SNP unfortunately got none. And so that's it. The votes match the seats as closely as possible, again, to the limits of rounding or any thresholds we may establish. And now you just have something that is a lot more fair and democratic, but for voters, it's super simple. And again, your grandma can understand it. Super important. Thanks for watching, and please leave comments if you have any questions or anything to add to this. Thanks for watching.